So we are going to get started, so if you can take your seats and order your drinks quietly, be good to go. All right, well, welcome to the second annual Prose Night. So I thought, poetry takes over most of the year, as it should. So tonight we have 5 excellent readers. All right, first up we have Elena Mae Darcy. I met Elena at Slutty Poems Night, I think, and they published an amazing journal, so you should check it out. Elena Mae Darcy. She is a queer poet, YA author, and film major from Philadelphia. They aren't sure what they love more, writing or their cat, Becca. It's definitely the cat. She is the author of the short story Continuum and has had poems published in Just Femme and Dandy and Imposter Lit, among others. Please welcome to the stage Elena Mae Darcy.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for that lovely little introduction. But these are all basically just kind of like creative essays that I'm hoping to maybe include in a memoir at some point. But yeah, so this first short piece is called When I Was a Crystal. My grandfather is in the walls. Every notch in the wooden panels is one of his fingerprints. Every creak the room makes in the wind is him sighing. But when the snow falls in the backyard, I don't hear those sighs anymore. There's nothing to listen to but a still earth that won't be that way for long. In a sleeveless shirt, pajama bottoms, and my bare feet, I push open the door. The heat from the house billows around me, meeting the open air like backlight spilling over a subject. It mingles with the February chill I'm about to step into. I smile as the cold bristles against my arms and face. I won't stay out here long enough to freeze, but I treasure this temporary cold. Being outside in weather that is like this without any proper attire hits a little different. People don't do that, which is exactly why I'm doing it. Walking far enough into the drift without enduring it. I won't stay out here long enough to freeze, but I treasure this temporary cold. Walking far enough into the drift without enduring it for long feels like an act of rebellion against my winter coat and boots. After all, I'm doing this to feel something. The knee-deep snow looks like an angel's wings have beat it aside when I push open the door. In the middle of the yard, the garden is buried. The tree branches hang low, heaped heavy with sugary snow on their spindling arms. The picnic table is piled high with what my child mind assumes must be a zillion flakes. I wiggle my toes a few times and then step barefoot into it. The cold doesn't shoot through me, but only because I prepared myself for its arrival. I know this cold, so it doesn't hurt me. As the frosty air washes over me, I close my eyes, listening. I am listening for the beautiful nothing that comes with a snowfall this thick. Every sound is swallowed whole by the peaceful quiet. I want to feel this quiet inside my own heart. I wish for a second that it would settle into me, that my mind could feel this ice the same way as my skin. The only thing out here with me is the whisper silver sky. I can't see the sun or the stars, only the blanket of soft gray clouds from which crystals fall. I think of how the snowflakes drifting down must feel so alone on their journeys. Maybe that is why I love them so much, and why I stand in solidarity with them. I knew even then, in that childlike state that didn't have the right words to describe, that I was like them. That I too drifted down to this earth, a sparkling cold crystal from a sky too big for me. I thought I was alone in my drifting, but always I was surrounded by so many others who all felt as lost as me, carried by the wind and the current of fate until I landed where I was meant to be and became part of something too big to understand. I wish I could go back to that house, back through the room my grandfather both built and died in, back through the door to that snowy, silent backyard, feet frigid, arms bare, held up to the sky, wishing I could return to it in a way that was hopeful instead of hurting. This memory wraps around me whenever it gets cold enough, and like those flakes once did to my eyelashes. I melt into the joy of recalling this little rebellion, until the shivering reminder of truth sets in. They're all gone now. That room, that house, and all the ones who raised me in it. And of course, the snow. I actually do not have the one that I thought I was going to, so you're just going to get one more. But this one is actually really fun because, as Sean was saying, this is going to be featured in the new Elixir Verse Equinox, which comes out on Sunday. This piece is called The First Ritual. A Llewellyn Spell-a-Day almanac sits on the bedside table. The bookshelves are starting to cave under the weight of paper. A sandalwood incense sits lit in the stone holder that's shaped like a dragon. Crystals are arranged in a circle, and dried roses rest in peace in a turquoise glass bottle. For once, the room is tidy. The floor is clear of clothes, the pillows on the futon arranged just so. From the small blue CD player, Josh Groban sings in Italian. The windows are open to let in the gentle breeze, the sound of suburban cicadas, and the glow of a starry midnight. It is November, which means Orion has arrived in the bright sky. The aroma of autumn's crisp decay mingles with the perfumed air as a flickering candle gives the hint of a crackling fire. The walls are covered in film posters and colorful collages and the books that helped me make sense of the world to the young mind who made them. That same kid who spent so many of their days sad, lost, and unsure finds a sacred comfort in gazing upon the quiet stars. Between bright heavenly points, they begin to trace their own lines, making the shape of the myth they someday hope to be. They don't know it yet, but this ritual is merely the beginning of their magic. They don't know it yet, but this memory is the root of a life lived in the light, even when they felt alone in the unending dark. They don't know that one day they'll write a poem of this memory and realize that even when nothing else feels real, they always will be. Thank you.
All right, next up we have a lot of people share like something in common. A lot of it's they do a lot of work to support the literary community here in Philadelphia. And Victoria Mier did with her bookstore, as was in Manayunk. She is a queer, disabled writer and suspected changeling. When she's not clacking away at her keyboard, you can usually find her deep in the Wissahickon, somewhere in a field with a horse named Castle, or curled up on the couch with her two favorite people, her cat Calliope and her partner Jordan. And Victoria also has a book, so welcome to the stage, Victoria. I'm so glad you could come today.
Thank you, Sean, for having me today. I am going to read to you a little bit from my debut novel. It is an urban fantasy. It's called Beyond the Aching Door, and it's set here in Philly, which is cool. So to give you a little bit of context, the main character has just been assigned to lead the investigation for her newspaper of a very mysterious series of drownings, and it is also coming up on the anniversary of when her father disappeared completely and was never found. So, girl is stressed, to say the least. Her Wednesday did not improve. Not that Reagan had been expecting such a boon. She buried herself in work, shirking off her promise to join a colleague for lunch at the pub down the street. In her defense, she was nearly finished with a long-form piece she'd been working on for almost 4 months and wanted to give the copy editors a good chance to review everything. Reagan had learned a long time ago that when you accuse the powerful of bad things, you better have all your ducks in a perfect fucking row. Day dissolved into night, the approach of October waiting for her just beyond the building's door, grief and memory and shadow hanging in the eaves. When the newsroom quieted and her long-form piece was in her editor's inbox, she slipped out the back entrance and headed for the train station. But instead of the subway, Reagan boarded the commuter rail. Her destination was at the end of the line, deep in the suburbs. Over the years, her morning ritual had become refined, exact, and it was important to get as far away from her real life as possible. The few people she allowed to be close to her were tired of hearing it, her therapist had to be exhausted by the tale, and what no one realized was that Reagan was sick of it herself. But grief is a story, and it is one that demands to be told. Which is how Reagan found herself in a cozy, if rundown bar, somewhere in New Jersey, signed up for an open mic night. That's also why I like to read this. The story was best presented to the unsuspecting as fiction. It seemed safer that way, like maybe it wouldn't worm itself into the listener's marrow if they thought of it as only an exercise of imagination. She settled down on a stool at the bar and nursed a 2-sweet cider, pretending to listen to the performer on stage. Despite the cool weather outside, the bar was unpleasantly warm and everything was sticky. After what felt like 2 years of bad comedy, Reagan had no choice but to peel off her overcoat and lay it across her lap. Condensation beaded on her bottle of cider. The story rattled inside of her like a caged thing, feathered wings beating against her ribs. Reagan reminded herself to sit like a regular person, to look normal, well-adjusted. In a place like this, only a few seconds of holding herself as if she were protecting an old wound would bring men sniffing, for daddy issues, for insecurities, for painful places they could poke and prod to get what they wanted. But then the host called the pseudonym Reagan had signed up under, and she breathed a sigh of relief, quickly followed by an inhale sharpened with anticipation. She left her coat draped over the stool and pulled her mane of auburn curls off her damp neck as she approached the microphone. No one looked like they cared at all about the open mic, so Reagan didn't bother with the little introduction she sometimes had to give. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and looked out at the small bar, the mismatched chairs, the wobbly tables, the low ceiling, the orange-hued lights. Then she took a breath and began. When my father was young, he met a man on a train platform. The man wore an old-fashioned three-piece suit. The sun was just beginning to set, the sky leaking spilled molasses. The man asked my father for a cigarette. He pronounced it strangely in an accent my father didn't recognize. My father obliged, but when he offered a light, the man only stared down at the cigarette. He rolled it between the fingers of his left hand once, twice, 3 times, before tucking it into his pocket. Not even going to smoke it? My father asked. No, the man answered. My father fell silent, moving a step or two away from the man. He stamped his feet against the ground to ward off the winter chill. The platform remained empty. He couldn't see any trains in the distance. His gaze eventually drifted back toward the man. Aren't you cold? My father wanted to know. My father was like that. No, the man answered, his eyes roving down the tracks. He took out an old pocket watch from the folds of his tweed blazer. He rolled it between the fingers of his left hand once, twice, 3 times, before tucking it into his pocket. As my father watched, the train station began to change. The bricks became new, raw red in the low light. The benches morphed into old-fashioned wrought iron, crisp and black. The colors of the sunset turned sepia. With a start, my father realized there was a train pulling into the platform, though he had never heard an engine. The man in the tweed approached the door. Do not follow, the man warned. My father noticed that despite the winter air, there was no puff of frosted breath when the man spoke. Who are you? My father remembers asking, though perhaps he already knew the answer. The man stood in the doorway, pulling the cigarette back out of his pocket and rolled it between his fingers. He lingered for a moment, but did not answer, and then he disappeared into the darkness of the rickety train, its sides heaving like an exhausted animal. For so many years, my father remembered the man, the train platform, the sepia-covered sunset. All my life, he paused when we said the Apostles' Creed in church, right before the I believe lines. It was just a small pause. 1, 2, 3. Reagan's mouth felt dry as paper, her heart a war drum. The story was true. Her father was gone, and the story was the only thing she had, and so she would keep telling it again and again and again. It was her way of looking for a door, a curtain to walk behind, a secret place she could go, and maybe her father would be there, waiting. If that kind of a door existed, she told herself, she was the kind of person it would appear for, and she would walk through it without looking back. Of course, no door appeared in the wall of the rundown tavern as she paid her tab and gathered up her coat. Nothing in the parking lot either, nor the train station, not even with its flickering lights and empty platform. No matter how many times Reagan begged for a door, no matter how hard she looked, nothing sprung its maw open with a creak that sounded like a lullaby. So she kept telling the story because it was closer to a door than anything else she had ever known. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that the story was an invocation of sorts, a calling of the quarters, a setting of beacons, and when she told it, fate herself swooped low from the never places and listened to the story fall from Reagan's mouth like wine. Thank you very much.
So this third reader is also a poetry trader, Sean Lynch. A writer, I'm just kidding, is a writer, editor who's published 5 books of poetry. The City of Your Mind by Whirlwind Press in 2013, Broad Street Line by Moonstone, 2016, 100 Haiku also by Moonstone in 2017, Unviolence by Radical Paper Press in 2019, and Halo Nest by Alien Buddha, 2024. Shout out to Alien Buddha as well. He's also the author of The Beast in the Pines, a psychological horror novel about the Jersey Devil. Welcome to the stage. He spells his name the right way. How can you not love him? Sean Lynch.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm the editor of Serotonin Press. You can find us on serotoninpress.com. Serotonin. We publish poems and prose on mental illness. We publish on Hanrahan. I wrote a novel. It's a psychological horror novel about This kid in the year 2003 who goes looking for the Jersey Devil for whatever reason. Chapter 11. They took back roads, hardly passing another soul. The few cars they did pass driving too fast to recognize their bizarre cargo. Sarah drove past tall pines and through a sparse dwarf forest, and finally through fields of dandelions and nameless weeds that looked like they survived through millions of years from the Cretaceous period before pulling into the rural hospital parking lot trailing a cloud of dust. Squalid refugees lounged patiently in a metal bed, their brains not yet having dredged back up the pushed-down memories in order to continue operating. Cody kept looking back at the blinded children, fearing one would fall out of the vehicle or even purposely fling themselves onto the asphalt in order to erase the reality of what had happened to them. Instead, they held on to each other and to the rails of the truck, skinny shoulders exposed, with bony spider leg arms in silent communal survival. Red and yellow leaves half covered some of the trees surrounding the hospital. Many of the trees were already completely bare. They had escaped the eternal green of the pine forest. How are we going to explain this shit to the hospital staff? I don't know, Sarah. This was your idea. Not saying it's a bad idea. I mean, where else would we take them? Definitely not a police station, Erica pondered as they parked on the outskirts of the lot. Cody remained silent. Hey, bud, Sarah turned to him. You look like you need a fixing up in there yourself. You're bleeding all over the place. Just don't say nothing to them about what happened. Or, you know what? We can drop them off here and then take you to the hospital in Atlantic City and say, like, you got in a fight or something. God, you smell awful. I'm sorry, but never mind. Let's just let you out here. I've been wanting to throw up the whole time. Where are we at now? Cody found the willpower to turn his head and look at her, but could only keep his eyes on her lips. We're in Voorhees, close to Cherry Hill. This hospital is brand new. You'll be fine here. I think we're far enough away from the fire and it won't be suspicious. Where's my stuff? I don't know. When I escaped, there was nothing inside the truck. Someone must have took it. Maybe it was the creepy dude, Virgil, who led us there? He did not answer. Not caring about Sarah's indecisiveness about where to drop him off or who took what or why, and just stared ahead at the hospital building, thinking about how trivial it was that he regretted his possessions becoming lost. Especially the video camera stolen from the supercenter, the gun taken from the man Sarah killed, and the book about the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil. He remembered the sewn-together mixture of decayed body parts, a crazed jester's fever hallucination of an infant demon. Was it all a dream? No. This was reality, and it could be explained. Or could it? Cody thought at first that the corpse of the Jersey Devil was a madman's reproduction, but he was not so sure. Deep inside, he believed that was the Jersey Devil. Maybe it was real. He'd forgotten for a time about the whole reason why they got into this mess. It was all his fault, he thought. The guilt became overwhelming. And then he remembered what happened to Sarah and Erica's little brother. Where's Steve? Joanna been watching him, Sarah said. Who? Joanna. She's my... You met her. She was the bartender at the Mud Hole Inn. Oh yeah. Does she know what happened to Steve? She knows enough. Now, what exactly are we going to tell these hospital folk? I say, we just drop them kids off and be on our way. We could explain. His words drifted away. Explain how? Let's just let the kids go through first, and then you go after them, Cody. and pretend like you don't know them. Sarah's tone was stern. How the fuck are they gonna get in the hospital with our help? They don't have fucking eyeballs, for Christ's sake, Cody yelled. Jeez, okay, I'll take care of it, Sarah said. How about we stop worrying about ourselves and get these kids to safety? Erica raised her voice angrily when she asked the question. She had enough with their bickering and turned back to look through the window with wide eyes at the children and their downcast heads. Erica's right, Cody said. Let's get this over with. Okay, but first, let me get that handcuff off your wrist. Sarah pulled a hairpin from her bun and straightened the frail metal into a rudimentary lockpick, then worked at the hole in the cuff until she was able to press the tiny button inside and pop it off. She looked up and smiled weakly at him, then got out and picked up the children, one by one, whispering in their ears while they formed into a single file, guiding them to the hospital entrance and running back to the truck before anyone could see her. The children entered through the automatic hospital doors, shuffling into the emergency room lobby, covered in ash, excrement, blood, and wearing tattered rags. A woman at the front desk raised her head from her paperwork and switched between her two eyeglasses with her mouth open, witnessing these children enter her otherwise mundane day. She dropped her glasses and picked up the telephone and muttered some words into it, and a group of nurses and doctors rushed into the room to take the coughing children beyond the doors into the inner workings of the hospital. Cody walked in as soon as they were gone and stood until he was able to get her attention. He turned to see that Erica and Sarah had never entered with him, even though he thought they were right behind him. Through the window, you could see the pickup truck drive away back east towards the Pine Barrens. He said he had been in a car accident and was handed some paperwork and asked to have a seat in one of the thin cloth waiting room chairs. The woman was crying silently behind her desk, enervated finally by everything that had happened. He collapsed onto the linoleum floor, mumbling repeatedly that he was okay. A gurney was brought out for him, and he climbed exhausted onto the lowered bed and fell face first into the cushion that smelled sterile and felt stiff but soft. Someone tossed him on his side and asked him questions, and he moaned yes or no until he was brought into a room where they took a needle connected to a bag and hooked him up to fluids through his good arm. He had no identification, no possessions, just his ragged clothes and his injuries. Kind faces hovered above him, mouths with reassuring smiles, and eyes glazed over, yet still somehow communicating concern. He fell into a deep sleep. A body made vermiculite, torches fluttering in a deep abyss until the tiny fires merged to fill a furnace. In the organic vessel lie countless seeds, flies inhabiting flesh, porous sand shifting, an explosion in a faraway desert. Gunshots crackling in sunlight, bullets pinging off metal, men yelling in Arabic about God and men yelling in English about hell. A blinding flash walked off the darkness. Alright, I guess that's it.
So next is Autumn Konopka, is a writer, runner, and trauma-informed teaching artist. Autumn's work has been published widely in literary journals and her poetry chapbook, A Chain of Paper Dolls. It was published in 2014 by the Hand Press. Her debut novel, I hope I pronounced this right, Autumn, you can correct me when you get up here. Fetapes?
By Deputies. It's fine.
By Deputies,
No
sorry.
problem.
Didn't Die, 2023, which she has copies of, yes?
Yes.
Has earned awards from the Next Generation Indie Book Awards, the Eric Hoffer Book Awards, and Writer's Digest. Autumn is a book reviews and interviews editor for Cleaver magazine, and a volunteer and ambassador for Still I Run. Welcome to the stage, and it's been a while. I've wanted you for a while. Autumn Konopka.
So thank you, Sean, so much for doing this. September is also Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And so if you don't buy a book from me, that's okay. Come see me. I have lots of like perky mental health stickers and also like, 988 stickers in English and Spanish because we just, everyone has a reason to be here. You are wanted, you are needed. I say that not just because yes, that, but also my book begins with a woman who is preparing to throw herself off of the Ben Franklin Bridge, and I'm not really giving anything away there. It's the first chapter. This dude comes and stops her from doing that, and not in a hey, don't do that sort of a way. It's like a very sort of goofy and bumbling thing that happens, and then their meet cute evolves into him asking her to help him run the Philly Marathon. But so the book is it's a love story about these two people who are really sort of trying to have a functional relationship or figure out what that's like in the aftermath of trauma. I'm gonna read a bit from Libby, who is the female protagonist, and then from Mac. It's Sunday, and I'm sitting at the base of the art museum steps, watching waves of cars and tourists come and go. Mac and I are running 8 miles today. I double check my messages. Yes, this is where we said we'd meet, but I don't see him anywhere. I'm not surprised. This is our first long training run, and it probably just occurred to him how far 8 miles really is. It's not even a third of a marathon, but it's double anything we've done together so far, and it's well beyond small talk distance. I'm guessing he realized we'd have to make conversation for almost 2 hours, and there are only so many food trucks and murals before someone starts unloading their shit. He had to imagine that would be me, right? Who knows what I babbled about the night we met. He'd be crazy to put himself through that again. After 10 minutes, my butt is numb from the cold, hard stone, so I start pacing. I think about going home, but it really is a beautiful day. A great day for running. In fact, it was a lot like this the last time I went for a long run. Damn, that was more than a year ago. I was in between races, running 20 to 30 miles a week as a standard baseline. Back then, it wasn't unusual for me to pick up and go for 10 if it was a perfect day. Of course, that day definitely wasn't perfect, and if I dwell on it, I might be the one ditching this run. I force myself to focus on the breeze goose pimpling my bare arms, the silly way tourists pose with the Rocky statue, the clomp, thud, giggle of children running up and down these famous museum steps. I am struck by the wonderful anguish of living. How even beautiful things we love, these small, insignificant moments can swell to enormity and make us absolutely ache for reasons we don't understand. A guitar riff cracks like thunder and I'm jolted back to reality. Not a real guitar, Mac's ringtone, creep. You have to cancel? I answer without even saying hello. No, I'm here, why would I? Do you need to cancel? He's slightly frantic. You're here? Where? I don't see you. I turn circles, staring into large groups. I can't find him. I'm at the fountain, where are you? Across the street, beyond a throng of people moving through the crosswalk, I see him. He's scanning the museum steps and sidewalk, not looking anywhere in my direction. There you are. I hang up and sprint to cross before I lose the walk signal. As I hit the curb, I slow my steps. I don't want to be panting or overeager. I'm so relieved, Max says when I reach him. I've been here 15 minutes. I didn't want to call because I didn't want to rush you or anything, but I thought maybe something happened to you or you changed your mind or you thought, whoa, I'm gonna have to listen to him ramble for 2 hours. No way. His eyes dart from me to the fountain, to his feet, to me, down the parkway, and back to me again. But whatever, you're here now, thankfully. Worried you'd have to do those 8 miles on your own? I smirk and try to sound nonchalant, like I wasn't on the other side of the street thinking the same thing. Then I notice he's wearing all that perfectly fitted running gear. There is nothing at all sneaky about his sexiness today. No, well, yeah, not just on my own. I can't do it without you, coach. He jabs me with his elbow and winks, quick and impish. I have to concentrate hard to not swoon. I bite the inside of my lip and laugh a little, trying to keep eye contact, steady, nonplussed. I don't want to bow my head like a coy little schoolgirl, even if that is how I feel. But the sun is bright behind him, and looking up means squinting like a pirate. So I take a breath and turn toward the museum. Following my gaze, Mac turns too. He sidles up and slings his arm casually over my shoulder. I'm really glad you showed up. Then we stand there, with his arm around me like we're buddies or bros or whatever. No big deal. Definitely not swooning, even though he smells amazing like spices and soap, and his arm lays like a perfectly contoured bolster behind my neck. The moment is perfect. The sun warms the backs of my legs. The breeze blows a slight mist off the fountain. I could linger here indefinitely. I guess we should get going, I guess. I clap my hands and rub them together, and Mac unhooks his arm from my shoulder. I'm a little relieved to stop holding my breath and tingling all over. I also miss it immediately, his weight and his smell. This is some bullshit, I tell myself. Get it together. So I do. I stretch, pulling my left arm across my chest. I hook it into the crook of my right elbow and gently pull. Same thing with my right arm. Then I grab my right foot behind me, pause to find my balance, then pull the right foot to my butt for a quick quad stretch. Then repeat with the other leg. Finally, I'm refocused. My shoulders are loose, my quads are warm, and I'm ready to run. Mac bounces on his toes. Which way, coach? I jog slowly toward the crosswalk, clear the crowds, and lead him south on the Schuylkill River Trail. The route I've planned will snake us through Center City, down Broad Street, and finish at the stadiums. Wait, why aren't we going the other way? Mac gestures behind us where the trail goes north toward MLK Drive. Isn't that a clean, long loop around the river? Yes. Yes, it is, I think. Actually, it's my favorite long loop. My favorite route, period. Anywhere. Or at least it used to be. Now, it's cursed and awful and heartbreaking, and just the thought of it brings the pressure of tears. And now we're picking up basically in the same spot, but we're in Mac's head. Libby trots down the slope toward Center City in the opposite direction of the Art Museum, the MLK and Kelly Drive paths, and me. Everyone goes that way, it's too busy, she calls over her shoulder without looking back. And I wonder if I've done something to annoy her. Hey, wait up! I sprint to catch up. To be fair, I don't quite sprint. In fact, and I'm ashamed to admit it because I'm sure this makes me a total sexist jerk, I take my good old time. I linger in her wake a touch longer than necessary and use those few extra seconds to admire her from behind. I know, I'm an asshole. I promised when we started that I wouldn't leer at her, and I meant it. I mean it. I really like her. I do. I respect her, and I appreciate how she's helping me, and I am truly, genuinely enjoying hanging out with her. But damn, she looks good in those spandex pants. It's hard to concentrate. So sometimes, just sometimes, I take a few seconds and let myself stare, just to, I don't know, get it out of my system. Busy? I ask, falling in step beside her. Isn't MLK Drive closed to cars today? Huh? Libby glances toward me quickly, then just as quickly turns away. MLK, I repeat. There are no cars today, so we'd have the whole road, wouldn't we? Does it really get that busy? I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're right. Her voice is brusque and impatient. I just don't like to go that way. Not all the time, that's all. Yep, she's annoyed at me. I get it. Kind of a pain in the ass. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to train. I don't know how to dress. Hell, I kept her waiting just now because I didn't go to the right meeting spot. The thing is, so far, none of this has seemed to bother her at all. We joke about it. She tells me I'm clueless. I agree. We keep running. You know, maybe it's not about me at all. Running is a mental game. My brother told me that once. He said, when you run a marathon, you have to gear up just as much mentally as physically. At least, I think that's what he said. I always drifted off when he and my dad would bro out about running. Yeah, yet here I am. Maybe I should have paid attention. Maybe I'd have a better idea of how to talk to Libby right now, because that's really all I want to do. Instead, I plod along quietly beside her and listen to the melody of her breathing. After a minute or so, I realize she's humming. It's the end of the world as we know it. What? She snaps her head in my direction, and her steps stutter a little, though she doesn't stop moving. The song, R.E.M., It's the End of the World as We Know It. That's what you're humming, right? Oh, yeah, I guess. Sorry. Her eyes drop toward the ground in front of her. I start humming the first thing that comes to mind. I'm only slightly out of tune, I think. But that's probably being generous. Is that supposed to be losing my religion? She asks. Well, yeah, but you don't have to say it like that. I feign insult, she laughs, and just like that, we're all good again. I hum something else. Smells like Teen Spirit, she says almost immediately. That was easy, at least make it a challenge. Okay, you go. No way. She shakes her head. I can't do it if I know you're listening. Oh, that's not fair. I agreed to run with you. I never said anything about being fair. She flashes a quick, coy smirk that could maybe be flirting. I've never been good at feeling that out. But Libby is especially hard to read. She goes quiet for a few seconds, and I get the feeling she's thinking something over, maybe trying to come up with a song to hum. Finally, she asks, So, Matt, what's your deal? Oh, what? What's my deal? Yeah, what's your deal? I feel myself slowing as my brain and my feet compete for resources. Libby, on the other hand, continues at her usual pace, but I'm so dumbfounded I can't even enjoy those few fleeting seconds behind her, watching her long blonde ponytail bounce and bend between her shoulder blades. Well, I don't think I have a deal. I pick up my pace to get beside her again. Of course you do, she presses. You're a decent guy, smart, not tedious to be with. She pauses, glances over, and quickly looks me up and down. You're also not unpleasant to look at, and you smell pretty good, so why the hell do you need me to run with? You usually hang out with boring people who smell? You're deflecting. Maybe a little. I let myself run a few paces in silence so I can collect my thoughts and steady my breathing. I knew she'd ask. I should really be surprised she didn't ask sooner. So, I begin. You know what? She interrupts. Never mind, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry or make you uncomfortable. You are decent, and I like running with you. And I mean, it's not like I'm swarming with friends. But you didn't ask a stranger, a very kind stranger, by the way, to run a marathon with you. So it's a fair question. I smile at her. She nods and smiles back warmly. I can tell she means it. She's not prying, and if I dropped it right now, we'd go on running, play the humming game perhaps, and things would be fine. We'd find something else to talk about, something light and trivial. The thing is, I don't think I can do light and trivial with her. I'm not exactly sure why. I've spent the past few years keeping mostly to myself, but something about her, I don't know. Being with Libby, talking to her, it's easy, automatic. The way the Fibonacci sequence just happens naturally and all around us. At the core of so many beautiful things is this pattern of simple numbers added each to the next, again and again and again. It's right there in the tree just off the path, branching higher and wider. In the head of the sunflower, its petals too, carried by a little girl who just passed in the other direction, even right next to me in the curl of Libby's pale pink ear, open to whatever I'm willing to tell her. It's unavoidable and necessary.
All right. Well, now we have our traveling writer. I think, when they do the thing like who's traveled the furthest, I think it's David, but if anyone's come further from DC, then let me know. David Ebenbach is the author of 10 books of fiction, poetry, and nonfiction, including his new novel, Possible Happiness, which author Gary Eldon Peter calls a coming-of-age love letter to Philadelphia in the late 80s, and to one young man's journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance. Welcome to the stage. I left DC to come to Philly. He left Philly to come to DC. David Ebenbach.
Oh, what's up, Philly? So nice to be here. So this is my hometown, and I'm going to read you a little bit from my, very little bit, from my novel Possible Happiness that just came out on Tuesday. Set in the late 80s in Philly, coming of age story. No coincidence, this is where I came of age at that time. I'll read you the very beginning, a couple of paragraphs, and then a scene later on in the book. Jacob was discovered in 11th grade. Not in a Hollywood way where he was catapulted to stardom by a movie studio or something. And also not in a murder mystery kind of way like the remains of Jacob Wasserman were found floating in the Schuylkill River. But more just that he was discovered to exist. It surprised him as much as it did anyone else. The way it worked was that previously, pre-1989, he had been basically background, walking the halls of Central High School, ruminating, mixed in among the crowd, a small, interchangeable piece of the setting of everyone else's lives. Nobody harassed him, but nobody shouted out his name when he turned a corner like he was Norm from Cheers either. He just slumped on by, more or less two-dimensionally. Then in the fall of 1989, he told one joke in class, not even an especially good one, and that started a cascade of events. It was as if suddenly someone turned around and said, "Hey, you're Jacob, right?" And then everyone else turned too and saw him and said, "Jacob, huh?" The extended results of which were that he was discovered to exist in 3D, already there in front of the world. And I'm going to read a scene. So he basically accidentally jokes himself into a social life, for better and for worse. This next scene, the social life is rolling. There's a girl he's kind of into named Tammy, and they're going to this club called Revival back in the late 80s. It had one of the great virtues beyond the music and the scene in general. They let high school age kids in. And a lot of the other places did not. So it was somewhere you could actually go and dance. That night, Jacob and his friends met up at the club Finn had told them about. It was in Center City. They heard the place, beats, noise, before they saw it. When they rounded the corner, Jacob stopped in his tracks. He realized he'd been expecting an anonymous door in the wall of some alley, some sketchy secret place. But Revival was in this huge stone building with pillars and everything, which looked like it used to be a bank or even a monument. Thunderous music pounded at them even a half block away. Meanwhile, coming in and out were heavily pierced people in black and some with hair in different colors and shaved in various ways. Honestly, Jacob was kind of scared of the place, but he was excited too. Everybody going in and out looked so intense, so happy. Well, angry actually, but like they were happy to be angry. Jacob remembered how it had felt good to lash out even a little bit. Felt a lot better than sad did. "Let's go," his friend Finn said. The guy at the door was very different from the one at the suburban club they try to go to. Super skinny and with his hair dyed sheet white and plastered back on his head, lots of piercings everywhere, and he seemed to know Finn. "Hey man," he said. And then he waved them inside to the window where they paid and got stamped with the too young for alcohol stamp. It cost less than Jacob had expected, and definitely less than the last club they had tried to get into. If outside there had been thunder, being inside was like being in the storm cloud. Lights were strobing against the dark and smoke, and the sound was all crash and bang and boom. That's a shout out to a local goth shop here in DC. Crash bang boom. Rebounding off the walls and in their chests, or into them. Jacob could feel it deep in his body. It felt good. Finn led them upstairs further into the cloud, and by the time they got to the second floor, Jake was already dancing a little, moving his arms and shoulders. He was feeling too good to not move, and it seemed like the others were having the same experience because his friends went right out onto the floor in this dark, flashing room, the sound growling and grinding out so loud from speakers somewhere, and without any hesitation, they just let themselves dance. It was a whole other thing from dancing at their friend Eric's place. In comparison, that had been like a dance at a nursing home or something. Here, people were stomping and punching the air and screaming. You could barely hear them over the music, but you could see their open mouths, their teeth. They were headbanging and even shoving a little, to the point where after a while the music cut out abruptly, and as everyone crashed to a stop, the DJ's voice came on loud. "No fucking moshing in here, motherfuckers!" And the music came back on and people stopped shoving but kept thrashing. Above all of them was this giant railway clock on the wall running backward. One song went into the next, and Jacob's friends were all dancing. Finn was right at home, pounding the ground with his boots, and Char was using her arms to swim in there, and Willow was twirling with her eyes closed and her mouth open, and Tammy was jumping and playing drums in the air, and Brian and Eric and Alice were hopping in place. Alice's long ponytail was flying all around. And then that same song came on. The one from the car the previous week, screaming about how someone had a head like a hole. And Jacob was just eating it up, just really agreeing with everything that was coming out of those speakers. The singer really hated that head like a hole, which somehow felt great rather than terrible. Jacob closed his eyes and started jumping. Suddenly he accidentally crashed into someone. "Oh, sorry," he said loud, the music still drumming forward all around, before he realized it was Tammy. He'd crashed into Tammy. He stood still. Tammy had a look on her face that he hadn't seen before, or maybe he'd seen it in the movies, but not in real life. It was a very serious look, very alert, looking right into him. "Klutz," she said. Quiet, but he could read her very pretty lips. The music and the strobe and everything all kept going, but the two of them were standing in one place, and then they were kissing, and this time Jacob didn't have to wonder what to do with all the parts of his face. This time it just made sense. Over the drums, the lyrics screamed at the two of them. Tammy tasted a little metallic somehow. Overhead, the clock kept rolling backward, like they might even get to do the night over again, the same exact way. Thanks, folks.